It is 2:30 in the morning, November 28, 1953. A man falls from the 13th floor of the Hotel Statler in Midtown Manhattan. His name is Frank Olson. He is 43, an Army biochemist, a father of 3. His roommate makes a phone call, not to the police, not to the front desk, not to Olson's wife. The call goes to a private home in Virginia. A woman picks up. The voice on the line says only 4 words. Well, he's gone. The voice belongs to the deputy of a man named Sidney Gottlieb, and 9 days earlier in a wooden cabin by a Maryland lake, Sidney Gottlieb had poured Frank Olson a glass of orange liqueur. That liqueur was laced with LSD. Last October, October 30th, 2025, the United States government finally, 50 years late, released what Sidney Gottlieb said about that night. This is what he said. To understand what happened in that Manhattan hotel room, you have to understand a very specific kind of fear. Not the fear of the bomb, not the fear of invasion. The fear that the enemy could rewrite a human being from the inside. In the Korean War, American POWs appeared on enemy radio reading anti-American confessions. 21 soldiers refused to come home after the armistice. They chose to stay in communist China. In 1950, a CIA-linked journalist coined a new word for what the Chinese were supposedly doing. He took the Mandarin phrase, "Shi Nao," wash brain, and translated it directly, brainwashing. By 1959, that fear became a novel called The Manchurian Candidate, an American POW, programmed by foreign handlers, sent home to assassinate a presidential candidate on cue. Here's the unsettling part. The CIA was looking for a real Manchurian candidate before the novel was even written. In 1952, an internal memo to the new CIA director, Allen Dulles, admitted something extraordinary. The agency could find no actual evidence the Soviets, Chinese, or Koreans possessed mind-controlled drugs. The memo's response was a single line: "We cannot accept this lack of evidence as proof." They proceeded anyway. On April 13, 1953, Allen Dulles signed off on a new program. He gave it a code name borrowed from the Allied secret that broke the Nazi enigma in World War II. He called it MKULTRA, and he handed it to a 34-year-old chemist with a club foot and a stutter. Sidney Gottlieb was born in the Bronx in 1918 to Hungarian Jewish immigrants. He was born with a club foot. He stuttered so badly he was rejected from World War II military service. He earned a Ph.D. in biochemistry from Caltech in 1943. He married Margaret Moore, the daughter of a Presbyterian missionary. He converted to a personal kind of Buddhism. He raised goats. He drank goat milk. He grew Christmas trees on his farm. He was a vegetarian. He was kind to animals. He danced folk dances on the lawn at agency parties. Late in life, he earned a master's degree in speech therapy. He wanted to help children who stuttered, like the child he had been. This is the dissonance you have to hold. The man who poisoned Patrice Lumumba's toothpaste was the same man who comforted stuttering children. The man who watched a colleague's body hit a Manhattan sidewalk was the same man who cried at his daughter's wedding. On July 13, 1951, Sidney Gottlieb walked into CIA headquarters for his first day of work. 21 months later, he was running the most secret program in the agency's history. MKULTRA was not a single experiment. It was 149 of them. Allen Dulles authorized Gottlieb to spend up to 6% of the entire CIA operating budget without paperwork, without audit, without trace. $25 million. Across 20 years, across more than 80 institutions: Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Columbia, Johns Hopkins, McGill in Montreal, Emory Penn, 185 named researchers, 44 universities. The money flowed through fake foundations. The professors did not know who was paying them. The patients did not know they were patients. The goal was simple and impossible. Find the chemical key to the human mind. Find a drug, a procedure, a hypnotic technique. Anything that could make a man forget who he was and become someone else. Sidney Gottlieb tried LSD first. He tried it on himself. He tried it on his wife in their living room. He tried it on his colleagues at the office, sometimes without warning them. Then he tried it on people who were not his colleagues. That is where the story stops being a science experiment. That is where it becomes a crime. There was a wooden cabin at Deep Creek Lake, Maryland, November 19, 1953. 7 of America's top biological warfare scientists at a CIA retreat. Sidney Gottlieb chose orange-flavored Cointreau because it would mask the bitter taste of LSD. He poured the drinks. The men drank. 20 minutes later, he told them what they had swallowed. Frank Olson did not handle it well. 5 days later, he came home and told his wife, "I have made a terrible mistake." He wanted to resign. He never got the chance. There was a 6-bedroom apartment at 225 Chestnut Street in San Francisco. The walls were lined with 2-way mirrors and Toulouse-Lautrec prints. A federal narcotics agent named George Hunter White hired prostitutes to lure men to the apartment. The men were dosed with LSD. They had not consented to anything. White installed a portable toilet and a mini fridge of martinis behind the mirror, so he could watch for hours. His own retirement letter, now in the public Senate record, reads, "Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, cheat, steal, rape, and pillage with the sanction and blessing of the All-Highest? There was a basement room in the Atlanta Penitentiary, 1957. A young inmate named James Bulger, later known as Whitey, volunteered for what he was told was a schizophrenia cure, for 3 days off his sentence each month. For 18 months he was injected with massive doses of LSD. He wrote in his prison notebook 56 years later, "Sleep was full of violent nightmares. Still that way since 57. And there was a small glass vial held over the Congo River railing. October 5, 1960. Sidney Gottlieb had personally flown to Africa with poison meant for the toothpaste of Patrice Lumumba. The plan was abandoned. Gottlieb dumped the vial into the river. Lumumba was assassinated 3 months later by other hands. January 1973. Watergate is breaking. Richard Helms, the CIA director, knows congressional scrutiny is coming. Days before retiring, Helms gives Sidney Gottlieb one final order: destroy everything. Gottlieb walks the operational MKULTRA files to the records office personally. He feeds them into the shredder by hand. 20 years of human experiments. Names, dates, subjects, doses, gone. Helms later tells the church committee, under oath, that the destruction was routine records management. But here's the twist. A clerk had misfiled 7 boxes of financial vouchers in the wrong storage center. Helms's order missed them. In July 1977, a different clerk found those 7 boxes. That mistake is the only reason you and I know this story at all. August 3, 1977. A Senate hearing room in Washington. CA Director Stansfield Turner reads from the surviving 20,000 pages. 80 institutions, 149 subprojects, $25 million. Sidney Gottlieb refuses to testify in person. He cites health reasons. There is a settlement. The Olson family receives $750,000 in 1976. President Gerald Ford apologizes to them in person at the Oval Office. But here's what does not happen. Nobody goes to prison. Not Gottlieb. Not Helms. Not George Hunter White. Not Ewan Cameron at McGill. Not the 80 institutions that took the money. In 1994, Frank Olson's son, Eric, exhumes his father's body. The forensic scientist James Starrs of George Washington University finds a hematoma on the left side of Olson's skull and chest injuries. Injuries that did not happen during the fall. Starrs' words on the record. Rankly and starkly suggestive of homicide, the Manhattan District Attorney opens a homicide investigation in 1996. It closes without a single charge. Everyone in that hotel room is either dead or covered by the statute of limitations. Sidney Gottlieb dies on March 7, 1999, in his sleep on his goat farm. He tells his family in his careful, stuttering voice, "I was a real patriot." Now we come to the present, October 30th, 2025, 50 years and 15 days after Sidney Gottlieb sat down in a closed Senate room. The National Security Archive at George Washington University publishes his complete testimony, 98 pages, marked top secret, released exactly half a century late. 6 months after that, April 26, 2026, The Intercept publishes a new investigation. Newly declassified files prove the CIA experimented on Korean War POWs, the very threat MKULTRA was built to counter. They had been doing a version of it themselves. And here's the question I want to leave with you. Because this is not just an American story. What does justice mean when a government admits the crimes and punishes nobody? When the documents come out 50 years late and the men who signed them are already dead? When an apology is paid in money and the Treasury check clears and the file goes back into the archive? This is not a question only Americans should be asking. Every government, every single one, has files like these. Files that will be opened in 50 years, in 100 years, when the people who can be held responsible are safely beyond reach. So here is what I want to ask you. Watching this, if you were a citizen of any country, anywhere on this planet, what is your relationship to the secrets your government keeps right now? Will you accept the apology in 50 years? Or will you start asking the questions today? Sidney Gottlieb died believing he was a patriot. The 7 boxes a clerk misfiled in 1977 say something different. History is the long argument between those two sentences. In the same year that Sidney Gottlieb's testimony was finally read in the daylight, 2025, a different kind of secret was being lifted out of the dark. 8 meters under the Mediterranean, off the coast of Egypt, divers were brushing silt from columns that had not seen sunlight since the time of Caesar. A submerged harbor, a submerged palace, a submerged tomb. The team believes it may be the lost royal complex of the last pharaoh of Egypt. Cleopatra. For 2,000 years she was a ghost in the historical record. We had her name, we had her enemies. We did not have her bones, until perhaps now.